Good to go. All right, we'll call to order Safety and Public Works, City of Brainerd. It is March 6th, 2023, 7 p.m. in the council chambers. We have 6 items on the agenda, first of which is the event street closure application for the CLC 5K. Mr. Dean, go ahead and tell us about that one.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So Saturday, May 6th, from roughly 9 a.m. till 10:30, CLC would like to hold their Mental Health Awareness 5K run. They want to start it at the college, run up their little Mississippi Parkway that kind of loops behind the school, utilize the right lane of the eastbound lane of College Drive, and then close down East River Road adjacent to Kiwanis Park, and kind of loop around Boom Lake through that direction. We've been coordinating with our police department to assist with the traffic control, and our public works department will also provide some traffic control materials as well. And they have already provided their certificate of insurance for this event.
Perfect.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
So when they police, do they just kind of like block a lane then for those folks, and then as they go, just open it up as they pass that area, or?
Yes, sir. That's what the police will be there for, is for the lane closure
Okay.
specifically.
I'd move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? I do just have one comment, that the date. I think they mismarked the date from the closure from 8:55 on 5/6 to 9:40 on 6/6. So with that correction, obviously it's supposed to be 5/6 for both of them.
Good catch.
So we're not going to close this down for a month.
For those times of the day, every day, for a month.
So with that, motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 2 is the Minnesota DNR Outdoor Recreation Grant application. This was on our agenda last meeting, and we had a conversation with the park board, clearing up anything that might be on that application that they might not want. So, Mr. Dean, go ahead and fill us in on what we came up with that was any different.
Yes, sir. You pretty much summed it up. So generally, the scope that was decided upon was removal of the restroom facility as part of that building, and to rebuild the existing facility further south as just a pavilion and like a little spigot or washing station. Potential of having to look at power, some sort of water bottle filler type of thing if you wanted to include it, but we can look at those details later after we know if we were to get the grant. But that's what we're going to apply for, is that facility as a pavilion and like a washing station.
Excellent.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
When you said removal of the building, that's all been inspected and everything? There's no salvage, nothing to be salvaged there or anything? It's that bad a shape?
It was inspected as part of the facility study in 2018. It didn't recommend demolition, but there's a lot of challenges with that existing building. There's foundation issues that have been shown up there. The sewer that exits the building, the lift station no longer works. So we're not able to utilize the plumbing there without having to rehab the lift station. Most of the cinder blocks are probably in good shape except for the foundation issues. So there's probably salvageable pieces, but the amount of money you'd have to put into it to rehab the building would be about as much as it would be to rebuild it.
That and the beach expansion would put the building essentially in the middle of the beach. So
Correct.
it makes sense to take it down.
I'd move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Number 3 is a resolution formally dedicating park lands, and this one is a little bit more detailed. But Mr. Dean, go ahead and take us through it.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So as we're kind of completing the remaining work this spring of Lyman P. White Park, and looking to have a resolution adopting that park, staff was unable to find a resolution ever dedicating any of the parks. So we thought we'd kind of clean that up here since we're going to do Lyman P. White, and just kind of put together a resolution that dedicates all of the parklands as parks, and thus under the supervision of the Park and Recreation Board. So in your resolution, you have a listing of all the different parks with generally the location by address if we had it I think I tried to list them out in alphabetical order. The new facility, I listed the parcels numbers that are included. This does include the fourth parcel number that is the little small skinny strip that follows the trail down to College Drive. This was not part of the actual park construction project, but the park board would like that to be included as part of Lyman P. White Park. It's just a strip that kind of borders the trail and the river. It's more for them to be able to look on clearing that up, cleaning it up for aesthetics and benches along that trail for the river use. So they would like that to be included as part of Lyman P. White Park. Other than that, it doesn't really serve much of a purpose. Other than that, I did list that out as those 4 parcels being known as Lyman P. White Park at the council's request at the previous meeting.
Excellent. So looking through this, I like everything about the Lyman P. White Park dedication. I think everything is great there. And then the list of, I didn't count how many are on here. What is it, 15 parks?
I believe it's 16 with
16
meadows.
parks. So looking through that, the one that sticks out first is Trailside Park. And that's about, 160 acres or something like that total?
I can't remember how many acres offhand, but yeah, it's
But
quite a bit.
It's a
I believe it's
very large piece of,
approximately 120 acres, and then there's some Crow and County tax forfeit land next to it as
Okay.
well.
so just in meeting with the park board last week and going over some of the concerns that we already have, so many facilities to take care of, we're kind of bursting at the seams with parklands right now. So I think it's a good time to have that conversation about if we're going to dedicate all these, one, what does that actually mean? Dedicating the parklands, are they park forever? Is that never up for conversation again? And the other side of it is, do we really want to turn all of that land into a park, or do we want to take a step back, take that off the list, and talk about some mix of development plus part of it being a park? I think the same thing about Buffalo Hills Park. We have about 10 acres of our 20 that we actually have developed into a park, next to another 20 that's owned by the school district, for a total of about 40 acres. I've spoken with board members from the school district, just inquiring about interest in what they're going to do with that land, and there's possibility for development with that as well. So even though 20 of that 40 acres is not something that would be dedicated right here, there's 10 acres of what is considered city land that's part of Buffalo Hills Park that could be possibly used in some form of development. I don't know where the park board is on their master planning with Buffalo Hills Park, but that would be a good question for that. And because of that, I would also leave Buffalo Hills Park out of this resolution. And the only other one that doesn't make as much sense to me is Gustafson Park, which is maybe enough room for 6, maybe 8 homes in Northeast, and it's about 2.5 blocks from Memorial Park, in between Memorial and Lum. Maybe leave that up for discussion too, if we want to continue to mow that. I don't think we have any programming there. We don't have any development there. But it would potentially take some of the burden from the park board if we left that one off as well. So those are my suggestions. I think the rest of these are all parks for the most part that we use and or are never going to be prospectively developed. But the rest of them, I think we leave there. Yeah, go ahead.
How about if we, I think I'd be in favor of just leaving those off tonight and having more discussion with the park board and perhaps anything with community development and see what we want to do there. So tonight, I'd be agreeable to just putting those 3 aside that you mentioned and then moving forward with the dedication of the rest, so.
Just send that question off to the park board.
Mr. Chair, if I can just quick clarify, Buffalo Hills, the master planning is completed. The other 2 are scheduled for this spring.
Okay.
The ones that we're discussing right now.
In that master plan, have they expanded that park into the other 10 acres of that park?
No, they were talking about a potential trail through there, but no like actual facilities that way.
Okay. I would still like to leave that off, I think, just for discussion. Going forward, I don't know what the discussion is gonna be with anybody at the, school district regarding that area, but
Yeah, I think if we do this tonight, I can see where you're at. If we do this tonight, it's okay, now, what do we do if we, oops, we shouldn't have done it? We're better off holding, that's where I'm looking at it. You know, because if we hadn't done this tonight, other than the Lyman White Park, we'd still be in the same boat. No dedication has been given to the these other 15 or 16 parks, so I'm okay with just leaving them off.
just for those three, we can always come back and dedicate whatever parts or all of those parks if we want in the future, I think, but, unless you guys can think of any more areas on this list that potentially would be questioned into possibly developing, I'd be open to that as well.
I am very hesitant to take land that has been, even if we haven't formally as a city council followed the proper procedure or been able to find where a city council has followed the proper procedure. I'm very hesitant to take land that has been treated as a park and pulling it out for development. But I guess if you really want to, just so that, like, it is known that there is going to be a very high threshold to get me to vote to do anything but treat these as parks.
Me too. You're right. But I would like to leave them off tonight, just for the sake of,
I think the reality of the situation is, especially with Trailside Park, it would probably be 5-10 years, maybe multiple decades before we even get to a point where we start developing that into a park.
But a park isn't defined by development or amenities. It is defined by being a public space.
Right. But if you look at all of our parks, they're full of facilities. That's what our whole discussion was about. So I'm not saying take these off and don't ever put a park there. I'm saying we shouldn't dedicate them as a park. They've never been dedicated as a park. So this is when we have that discussion. That's all.
well, at this point, I would make a motion that we move forward with everything but those three you mentioned and dedicate those. So that would be my motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to move forward with this resolution minus Trailside Park, Buffalo Hills Lions Park, and Gustafson Park. Any more discussion on that? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, moving to the next one. This is a resolution removing on-street parking from the Lum Park Road. Mr. Dean, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So this is part of the State Park Road account rehabilitation project for Lum Park. Currently, there is parking allowed along Lum Park Road. However, some of the adjustments that we're proposing as part of the project would narrow a portion of Lum Park Road, mostly north of the Casey's accesses. That narrowing is to accommodate the new walking multi-use trail, while limiting some of the impacts to that drainage ditch that kind of comes underneath the road itself. So with that narrowing, that would limit the amount of parking that we'd be able to hold there. The other part of that is Lum Park Road's already very restricted for parking based on the lane configuration that approaches 210. There's 3 lanes there, which doesn't allow for on-street parking in that area. And then also adjacent to the boat trailer parking, we wouldn't allow on-street parking adjacent to that. And then we have some scattered access for the maintenance shop. So it's already pretty limited for the ability to on-street park. So what we're talking about removing is a pretty short stretch, but this is, as part of the project, we're trying to save on some costs with additional paving costs, as well as being able to accommodate the new trail there. So what we're doing is we're kind of cleaning up some of the area that in effect does not have no parking, but also restricting parking from the narrowed section. And just to note that the narrowed section that we're talking about, we specifically made sure that that was north of the Casey's accesses to make sure that they still had sufficient roadway width to enter and exit, especially with the trucks, to their diesel pumps to the north.
Okay,
Mr. Chair?
yeah, go ahead, Mr. Chesak.
Jesse, is there any, there are no residential property abutting that, correct?
That is correct. The only other property other than Casey's is BPU as their booster station, but they have off-street access for their maintenance vehicles.
I think the only time that this really would show a major effect is during ski-land shows, and they have them, I think, 3 times a year at that park, I believe. Four times a year at that park. So there would essentially be, 2 blocks of no parking where it usually is filled with cars. Other than that, the rest of the entire year, I don't think we usually see anybody parking on those streets, that street. So I don't have a problem with it.
I'd move to go forward with the no parking on that stretch
Second.
of Lum Park Road.
Motion to move forward with the resolution removing on-street parking on Lum Park Road, and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Next one is revisiting something from last meeting. We had a bid for the engineering services for the Buffalo Hills Gully. We sent the question back, seeing if we were in the right vicinity as far as the amount that was bid for this project, and that was $75,932 by Bolton and Mink. Looks like we got a couple more proposals back. Mr. Dean, if you want to walk us through those.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So WSB provided a proposal of $71,972. After the packet went out, we did find that we had another proposal from SEH. You have a copy of that one in hand. Their total was $64,130. SRF did not provide a formal proposal, but in discussions with the SRF staff, they did confirm that they felt that Bolton and Mink's proposal was in the ballpark of what they would have proposed. They thought there's some room to improve, but thought it was in the ballpark. So with that said, standard practice for construction engineering is we are billed by the hour by the firm for the hours that their inspectors spend on the site. The differences in prices is potentially a cap on the total price that they can charge us without approaching us for a proposed contract amendment. So the issue here is all these firms had to go off of an assumed 8-week construction period. We really don't know at this point how long the construction period is going to take. It can vary quite wildly by the contractor that we might get. We might get a really fast one, or we might get somebody that takes a little bit longer to do it. Ultimately, what we're going to be responsible for is paying for the engineer that is out there inspecting the work when the work is occurring. So either way of all 3 of these proposals, if the 8-week construction process ends up stretching into 16 weeks, all 3 of those consultants are likely going to approach us for a contract amendment because that project and their scope is changing beyond their control. So with that, the staff is still going to recommend that Bolton and Mink be awarded the project. However, we're open to all 3 firms. They all can do an incredible job for us. So I think we would be happy with any of the 3 should the council award somebody different.
Okay. So the first proposal came in roughly 76,000. Another proposal came in, what was it, 72,000, right around there. And between the 2 of those, I think you stick with the original one just based in fairness. It's not that big of a difference in price. But now this other one came up right before the meeting here, and it's 64,000. So $12,000 less than the original bid. And I don't have time to go through this with a fine-tooth comb and see if they're actually doing anything different, or is it just that much more affordable because they're already established here? What is the difference? Why is it so much cheaper?
So they were all instructed to keep the same scope of work as Bolton and Mink's to try and keep as much fairness since Bolton and Mink's was open and available for them to review. The difference is going to be how much hours they allocated If they felt like they could do it with less hours, that would be the difference.
Okay.
I struggle with this one because it just seems like it's unfair. We have a advertised proposal from Bolton and Mink, and we sat here on it for a while, and it's been widely available for any of these other engineering services to look at, and as much as I'd like to save the money, it just doesn't seem right. And I guess I would be asking our city attorney if that, and like we talked about, mentioned earlier, it just doesn't taste right to me. It doesn't smell right either. So
Our city attorney just happened to come into the room, so.
hi, city attorney. Well, so you know, I think you know the circumstances. We had the proposal from Bolton and Mink at almost 76,000, and last meeting we asked to go out for other engineering prices. Apparently, it's the same scope. Obviously, any of these other firms knew that this was what Bolton and Mink was at, and it just doesn't seem correct that they knew what to go up against, and if we did it all at the same time, I suspect that you might have it's not competitive. That's why I look at it. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think?
Well, Mr. Chair, this is a professional services contract. It's not a bid deal. So you're not required to go with the lowest responsible bidder here. There are no bidders. So it's really up to the council to decide what is the best fit for the city, all things considered. That's not just a dollar value thing. Now, whether, fairness is a legitimate factor in that consideration is up to the council. Ultimately, the idea is to get the most appropriate deal for the taxpayers. At the end of the day, that's your fiduciary duty. So whether that's somebody that you've worked with before or whatever the factors may be, they're not all monetary factors. But like I said, ultimately, you want a good quality consultant, and you want it at a fair price. And if all three can do the job, then is that really to the taxpayer's advantage to pick somebody else just because of the way the city undertook its process?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we're always used to going with the cheapest bid,
The least expensive.
the least expensive. And honestly, I was hesitant on doing this, but just having this put in front of me 20 minutes ago, and it's $12,000 less expensive, I would go with it. If it's we've got a working relationship with SEH. They've worked on things in that area. I would just say maybe going forward, we reach out to more than one for any of these engineering services in the future, so that we can avoid this happening again. But I would lean towards hiring SEH on this.
Well, if I'm hearing from our city attorney, we wouldn't be doing anything illegal, and it's maybe not be quite ethical, but in the sense. But yeah, I want to save the money too. So, but I'm not making the motion.
Well, I guess that means I'm gonna have to make the motion. And I'm divided myself, but, I will move that we go with SEH.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to go with SEH for the engineering proposal for Buffalo Hills Gully remediation project. Any more discussion? I'll just say moving forward with these
Professional service.
these professional services agreements, I would highly suggest we reach out to multiple in the future before that comes to council, so that we don't have to go through that again. But
Well, and that note, if I may, is it not in our best interest to do that anyways? I mean, I don't know if you pulled the name out of a hat. I'm not suggesting you did, but why didn't we look for more than one on this one? Do you know? I mean,
I specifically went to Bolton and Mink because they have not done work in the last few years, and all the other consultants are currently engaged in different projects for us. So without trying to I'll call it overwork any one specific consultant with additional work when they're focused on other projects. I wanted to utilize Bolton and Mick, who is another one of our local consulting engineers that isn't currently doing a project for us.
Okay. Understood. All right, any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
No.
Oh, okay. Still passes. All right, number 6, street lighting policy. I think this is our final motion to get through this street light policy. Jesse, if you want to take us through that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So this shouldn't be anything different than we've already seen at some point throughout the last handful of months and last spring and last fall. So this is just a summary of everything all put together from the lighting standard, the spacing that was agreed upon, the different corridors, and what was discussed at the last meeting, that none of the commercial corridors will have the banner or outlets attached to them. And then we just included an appendix with the specific lighting fixture standards and pole standards. So that way we could publish this on our site, and anybody that would be potentially developing a new street would know exactly what we are requiring as part of our street lighting standard between what fixture to pick out and where to put them, at least for location. So nothing new here outside of it's in a nice, neat package for you to take a look at.
Like that. Any discussion, questions for you guys?
I'll move to move forward with this streetlight policy that we have in front of us tonight.
Second.
Motion to formally adopt the street lighting policy
Yes.
tonight. All right, and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We can adjourn to the meeting, council meeting.
Where's that at?
It should be right in here.